This
now by Kentucky Democratic Governor Andy Beshear. Governor Beshear, thanks so much for being with us. Let's just start out. What does this bill, the cuts that are in this bill, what will it mean, not just for the state of Kentucky's health care, but for the economy of the state of Kentucky?
Oh, this big, ugly bill is going to devastate health care in Kentucky and hammer our economy. You look at 200,000 Kentuckians losing their health care coverage, 20,000 Kentucky healthcare workers losing their jobs, 35 rural hospitals that are the second largest employers in each of their counties closing. That is an enormous hit that's going to be felt throughout Kentucky and throughout the United States of America. You're going to lessen people's health care. We're going to lose people that we care about. Our workforce is going to be less productive because people are going to have to bring their parents in who are otherwise covered on Medicaid for long-term care. They're going to have to take days off of work to drive their kids hours just to see a primary care physician. I mean, this is going to hammer the American economy. It's completely preventable. And if they will just listen to some sense, they should stop this bill where it is.
Well, you know, Governor, speaking of listen to some sense, Senator Tillis of North Carolina had been handing out a document to his Republican colleagues showing how much money their states would lose in Medicaid money that would be cut under the Senate bill. You see it there. And North Carolina alone, the senator's home state, would lose $38.9 billion.
In those counties. This is going to hit one of the fastest growing sectors of our economy. And listen, I believe health care is a basic human right, that you should be able to see a doctor and a specialist where you live. It's why I've been able to expand Medicaid in my state to hearing, vision, and dental, all while cutting our income tax and our property tax rate within a balanced budget. But look at this big, ugly bill. They're adding trillions of dollars to the national debt. They're going to blow a hole in every state's budget potentially through what they're doing with SNAP. They're going to fire a ton of health care workers. They're going to throw people off their health care coverage. They're going to close rural hospitals, and more people are going to go hungry. What could be beautiful about that? Absolutely nothing.
Governor, before we let you go on, the senior senator from your state, Mitch McConnell, said this about folks upset, concerned, worried about the Medicaid cuts in this bill. He said, quote, "I know a lot of us are hearing from people back home about Medicaid, but they'll get over it." You represent the same people that he does. Should they just get over it? Will they get over it?
Yeah, ain't nobody getting over this. If you lose your job because Mitch McConnell votes for this bill, you ain't getting over it. If you lose your health care coverage and suddenly you can't get that treatment you need to battle cancer, you ain't getting over it. If you've got to take a parent back in who's getting great help and now you've got to quit your job to take care of them for every single day, you ain't getting over it. If you live in a county where 1,000+ people are employed by a hospital that is no longer open, you ain't getting over it. I mean, the fact is, if they pass this bill, they are going to pay in the next election. But we always talk about elections. The people of the United States are going to pay. Some will pay with their lives. Others will get hit in this economy. This is going to be one of the biggest unforced errors a political party has ever made. They're going to impact what was otherwise a strong economy with tariffs and now this. I just can't believe that they care so much about loyalty to a political party or a president that they do this to the American people. They need to rethink about what their oath of office is. They need to rethink about what patriotism means. We pledge to the flag, not to a person. And in that pledge, we pledge to an indivisible country. And look at what's happening. Just attempts to divide us at every turn. This is going to hurt Democrats, Republicans, and independents. It's just an awful bill.
Ooh, Governor. Now is the Democratic senator from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Mark Warner. Senator Warner, thank you for coming to the weekend. So, big picture question here. Will Senate Republicans fall in line and vote for this dog of a bill in order to send it to the House?
Well, Jonathan, you know, they do a lot of talk, but it seems like when push comes to shove, they often collapse. And this bill is so god-awful. I mean, it's 16 million Americans off of health insurance. It's millions of Americans losing food assistance. It even cuts food banks, frankly, for tax breaks for the wealthiest. And if you want to just take one big takeaway, This bill would basically take us back to pre-Obamacare days in terms of the percentage of Americans who are uninsured. It would more than double the number of uninsured, for example, in my state. It is awful on every account. It adds $4 trillion to the debt. It cuts clean energy jobs. You can put as much lipstick as you want on this pig, but it is still a pig. And I think they're trying to rush it through because the more Americans hear about it, no matter where you fall on the political agenda, you think this is a pretty damn bad bill.
Senator, I'm curious what you think about how you are watching Thom Tillis go around telling his Republican colleagues with the document, like, this is how bad it's going to be. This is what these Medicaid cuts are going to do to all of our states. You have, in Louisiana, health systems telling the Speaker of the House how bad this is going to be. You have Josh Hawley, who voted yes on the procedure, but saying he'll fight Medicaid cuts if they do come, meaning that he thinks they're going to come. With all of that happening in front of us, how do they talk to you behind closed doors? Why do they feel like they have to support this when they know, and they talk to us on Background as reporters, they talk to our colleagues in that room, those rooms behind me, about how they don't like this bill?
Process. You had key moderates like Lisa Murkowski really drag their feet on where she was going to land on this. You had Senate Republicans who were mad about public land provisions. And then you had fiscal conservatives who were meeting with Majority Leader John Thune up until the very last minute, turning what it would have been a relatively short exercise into a 4-hour-long affair. And so this brings us to where we are now, where the bill is being read in entirety, and then there will be a series of unlimited amendments that could drag final passage of this into Monday.
Mm. Brendan, one of the things that is really interesting to all of us, I think, is kind of the fact that politically it continues to seem like this isn't a huge winner for Republicans. You have Senator Tillis, who voted no yesterday of North Carolina, one of the most vulnerable Republican senators, saying, I cannot support this bill in its current form. It would result in tens of billions of dollars in lost funding for North Carolina, including our hospitals and rural communities. This will force the state to make painful decisions like eliminating Medicaid coverage for hundreds of thousands in the expansion population. You have Louisiana hospitals, according to Politico, warning Mike Johnson of devastation from the mega bill. It just seems over and over again they are getting proof positive that maybe this bill in its current form is not good for them politically, and yet they're still moving forward. Obviously, this is a procedural vote, but it shows kind of a preview of things to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the result of a really bad process, and a bad process is going to lead to a bad policy outcome. I mean, the reality is they have to move forward, because if they don't, Donald Trump has absolutely nothing to show for himself as a legislative agenda. Yeah, this is unpopular. You've reached the sort of tipping point where you never want to get, where, of course, Democrats are saying it's bad, but we've also had weeks or months now where Republicans have been saying how bad it is. And so it does, poll very poorly.
Why this whole thing passes, despite the political liabilities. But, one of the people who voted to proceed on the on debate of this bill is somebody who's been out there like ringing the alarm about rural hospitals, and that's Senator Josh Hawley. Listen to what he had to say. This was yesterday afternoon. I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but on this one, preach, brother.
I think that this has been an unhappy episode here in Congress, this effort to cut Medicaid. And I think, frankly, my party needs to do some soul searching. If you want to be a working class party, you've got to deliver for working class people. You cannot take away health care from working people. And unless this is changed going forward, that is what will happen in coming years. So I'm going to do everything I can to stop that.
And so, Nicholas Wu, the question here is, will Senator Hawley stand by his convictions as expressed in that soundbite that we just played and vote no on the bill? He voted yes on the motion to proceed, which I completely get from a process standpoint, and you're a Republican. You want to go back to your constituents and say, look, I voted to let debate happen on the bill. I didn't like it, and so I voted against it in order to protect you. But will Senator Hawley be able to withstand the gale force winds coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Hawley is so far looking like he might end up voting for final passage of this bill. But the question is whether or not it changes anything more before final passage, because one of the potential compromises that allowed the motion to proceed to go forward last night was what appears to be a commitment made to fiscal conservatives in the Senate to put up an amendment to further change Medicaid, to undo some of the federal cost sharing that was expanded with Obamacare. And so if that is allowed to pass, they could have some real math problems within their own conference moving forward as they try to tee up this legislation.
Brendan, this is obviously step one for the Senate. The Senate has to vote for final passage, but then it has to go back to your old stomping grounds in the House, where folks have talked over and over again once they read the bill after they voted for it, realizing they didn't like certain things in the bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of them, who dislikes the fact that you can't make any changes to AI.
This, as you can see here, this is going to hurt Trump in red states. This big bad budget bill. And again, let's be clear. I want to make a couple things clear. It hasn't passed the Senate yet. It's just been read in for debate. It's past the procedural hurdle. There still needs to be another ultimate vote on the bill, and there's no guarantee it'll pass. And again, we have to make it clear that there have been some substantial amendments from what it was in the House. Some of those amendments, I guess, fix issues from the first one, but most of them make the bill substantially worse. So it's going to have to go back to the House and try to barely again pass another majority in the House. And again, that's not guaranteed. And to fix that, they need to make amendments. And those amendments would need to go back to the Senate, where again, it's not guaranteed. So this isn't nearly over yet. But if this bill does pass as constructed, you can see how in red states and in purple states and in the red parts of blue states, this is going to hurt Republicans. Virginia is not a red state federally. It's still voted Democrat, but, it has a Republican governor. And that Republican governor is likely screwed if he has to run against the optics of this bill. And likewise, or the Republican nominee following them, because you can't be a consecutive governor of Virginia, but whoever is running for that office. In red states like Kentucky, you're going to see Democrats emboldened. Beshear, I think, is probably going to run for president. And his run for president will be strengthened coming out of his own red state in opposition nationally to this big bad bill, right? Why do you have Democratic governors in deep red states like Kentucky when Republicans do stuff like this? Because those states, the voters are Republicans. They generally want Republicans, but they want the idea of Republicans that they're sold as a lie. That Republicans care about working class people, but they don't, and it's these bills that reveal it. Taking trillions over many years, trillions in tax cuts to the rich being paid for by cuts to healthcare and social services is not popular even with MAGA, and they're going to learn that lesson.